Hello and welcome to another night shift. My name is Yazil, and today we want to look into the ease window. So what we want to do is we got a live picture of our little character here in our overview, so we can see when we change armor or weapons. That will be later on. And first we want to set up these. So we want to have these buttons so we can switch from stats to info and to the base where we have our items. And well, of course, the items is full functionally, and we can change them and put that back here and so on. Let's get started. First of all, until now we had our slots here made from the Unity feature, and now we want to have these positioned in our database. So we could say something like here in our slot database, we could extend that with an X and Y position and also with the slot info. But since we use these or we create new items here, we would override that all the time. When we change an item from here to there, we would override one of these positions. So you could hard code that, or you could hard code the positions into your script. So maybe if it's character window, just use these elements to build up the X and Y positions of these slots. I thought it's better to do that in here, since we never know when we use extra information on these slots. Maybe is it a bag type, or we want to have or we want to able to open something, or whatever it is. So I thought it's good to make a new database for that. So basically we have for these window two databases. One is the slots and one is the position. So let's get started. Well, we're going to stop that and open up our... Oh no, let's start with the Unity setup here. That's maybe easier to start here. So we go into start and I'm gonna load that, and let's bring up this window with the things we need to do. And first we have the buttons. So you just copy one of your bags here, or whatever you do, or whatever you want to. Just create a panel, going for the size, width and height, and going to add a couple buttons. So these are simple Unity buttons, nothing else. Then we got a player top here, which we could describe in text like player, inventory, or whatever you want there. Then we got our script for dragging the panels, right and left and up and down, or something like that. And we have our panel or our button for clothing the window. You all know that from the other things here. Then we have the three windows, the base, stats, and info. So we had the base, stats, and info. So that's the basic setup for these window. So if you see here, it's just the size from the window itself, and they are exactly the same size for the info and stats here. Okay, that's not too hard. You have to remember when you build up a new window, you have the name here, and let's go into our UI. So let's go into there, and we go into for our UI, and in our UI we have to have the new Boolean for the character on off, so we can save that on our settings.cnf file. And then of course we have to set it to false on true value. And of course we have to have the character position X and position Y, so we have a default starting position for this window. Okay, that's for the UI, and when we handle with the UI, of course we have to manipulate our settings file. And in our settings file we have a new public game object character window. And down here we have a new function, switch character window. So we say Zui.character on off equals not Zui character on off. So it won't, if it's true, it will be false. If it's false, it will be true. And then we gonna set active the window to our value we have in our saving file. And then we set or we trigger the event spawn at slots. So if it's closed and we have something or we changed something, it will be triggered here and items will be redrawn. And of course here in our screen up window we have to set the active status from the Zui.character on off file. So we set that to the value we have in our files settings.cnf. So that will take care of the databases. Not the database, the settings CNF files. So we don't need the settings any longer, and we don't need the UI any longer. So we move there. Always remember, if we go to our game manager, and we go to our settings file here, fill that up with your character window. That will be this one on the top. So we want to, if we click here, we want to hide this window. And for that, if we click here, let's go for the close button. Of course, you have to go for the game manager and the settings switch character we did a couple seconds ago. So this function will be drawn or will be running when you click the button. And of course you have to do that. Let's switch off on our world. So if you click on one of these buttons and you want the character screen will be going on, you have to fill that also with the function we have on the button. So, and now our window will be saved and our window will be shown and hiding when we want that. And what's the next part of it? Yeah, the next part is of course the little puppet inside here, which is quite an easy feature we can do. And for that, let me pick up Paint. So what we want to do is, if we have our little let me go, I'm bad at mouse drawing. Here's our little character, and what we want to have is we want to have a camera here and watch our little puppet here and show that not on the screen. We want to have that into an JPEG or whatever it is, so some kind of image. And we want to tell the camera we only want to show these little thing, and maybe if here is a tree or whatever. Oh, my bad. If it's a tree or something, it won't show this tree. So that we want to do. And for that, let me No. For that, we go to our player, and we have a camera, and we set that camera, or I set the camera 1.5 units into the height and 2 in front of, and I just turned the degrees to 180 degrees, so it will be backwards, and I have it a little bit from the top to down, so it's a little from above. Then you go and say the camera background is solid color, and the solid color you're just going for, if you see that, just going all the way to 0 alpha, so the background is not shown. And then I used direct port 2.5 to 1, so it's double high than wide. So because my character is of course in the height, and I don't want to have area next to right and left to that, so I made it double high than wide. You could always do stuff like these or whatever you want and whatever you think it's the right thing to do. And then you see here the target texture is here in player, or I called it player, and that's just easy to do. You say create, and you go for let me go where it is. Here it is, render texture. You go for render texture, and there you say the texture stuff you want to have, and in our case we just let it everything to normal. We don't manipulate anything, and starts to generate that. So I delete that, and we go and see for scripts, and I guess I have it in UI somewhere, or in player. I got it in player. And you see it's just the normal as you created that. And now go to your camera and just go for put in the render image here inside there. And now we will be, or everything our camera will be rendering will be shown here in this picture. So what's next is, since we only want to have the camera render the player, we have to say the culling mask. So if you just go for something like here, you get here, it will be rendering everything, and we just want to render only the player. And if we go here up there to our player, we see the player layer is player. So we make sure only our player is rendered by the camera, and so there is no trees, no rocks, no grass, or whatever you have in the different other layers will not be shown in our character window. So next is we go into our character, and since we have our 3 parts, so it's the character base starts at buttons, info button, we have the corresponding char base, and we go there, and when we open that, we just produce a raw image, and you just go right click and create UI raw image. And in our raw image, you say the texture is our player, which was the render image we created before. So now in our game, the player will be shown in these render image, and that is a raw image with the texture of that. It's basically the same. You create one of these maps if you want to do that. Look into that. It's the similar process, except that you have the camera high above in the air. Good. For that to work 100%, since sometimes, let me open that. So let me scroll down there. Yeah, there it is. In our player, after we finished everything, we have to make sure that the UMA renderer, which is the character itself, is on the player layer. So you see here I set the UMA, I found the UMA renderer game object, and there I manipulate the layer and I set it to 8. Now let's see where I get the 8 from. So I close that, and there, for example, and we go here and say add layer, and now you get the layer numbers. So I got my player on layer 8. If you have it on 9, 20, 30, or whatever you want to have it, you have to set that to the same number. So my number is 8. Your number could be something totally different. So that is here in the character callback. So if the character is ready and everything is set up, we just look for the UMA renderer, and then we set the layer to 8, which is the player. And so we are safe to say when our game is coming up that the player will be rendered in our little window here. So last to say to that is that your raw image has to have the same aspect on window width and height as you had in the camera. So I have my height double height to the width, so it's 1 to 2, same as we had in the camera. Good. Next is, of course, we want to change these windows. So we have here in our character a little script. I called it window on off. So you just make a little script, open that, and we go there. So player, there's nothing we change except these one line. Let me going for 7.14. So I know when we change that, and close that because we don't need that any longer. So in the window on off, we just have our 3 game objects, which are these window here, the base, stats, and info. And we have 3 public void functions, which we can bind to our buttons. So char base on, stats on, and info on. And we all set just the char base.set active to true, so this object will be true and will be shown, and the other both stat and info will be false, so not shown. And if you have stats on, you have the stats to true, the rest to false, and if you have info on, you have set active info set active to true and rest to false. Just not very hard. You just do it for every window you have. So if we have 5 or 6 windows, you have to have that in a couple more functions. So let's go back there, and in our window off, on off, you set the chars, the game objects, which are the char base, stats, and info, and just fill that up there. And if you start your game now, you just can pull these triggers when you have filled the buttons with the functions, so window on off, and here char base on, stats on, info on. So that makes your window vanishing or hiding and popping up the other windows. So for our inventory, we of course have to have a new canvas, and I have it just in the same width and height than the rest of the small windows here, and against the other ones which I bound to the upper corner, I bind that to the lower corner. So it's just here, and I have not to set the X positions or Y positions down here or something like that. So just start counting from down here all the way to the top. And then of course, as we have to, or as we did with the other things, we have to have in our game manager the settings. We did that already here. Set the character to these game object, and then make an empty game object, and to that empty call it character, and going to add the inventory script to that. So in the inventory script, we had already the slot position out of database and the type out of database, and I just checked them so we can work with them also. So the difference between this setup and the other setup is if we go for the inventory here and go in our inventory, you see we have a grid layer group, and we position them automatically with the layered group. And here in our character, if you go to there, we just have an image where you can set a background and nothing else. So the position of the single slots we do to the database, and let's build the database. So let's go back there. Here we have we work with these three files, and one is the inventory position script. I just made a new C# script, put it here into our inventory, and said we belong to the namespace Yazil ItemSystem, and it's system serializable, and it's the class inventory position, and in the class it's just an X and Y, and the item type. Let's go where we find the item type. It should be in our helper class, and here in it's in our item. It is. So we in our namespace Yazil's item system, we have the item type, and here are the item types. We have weapon and shields and stuff like that we had to use before in our item definition for the item database. So we just have a reference from that here. So okay, and then we need to build up the database, and that's the next C# script, and it's inventory position database. And just build up for the scriptable object, so it's class inventory position database serialized field, and in our serialized field, or in our class, I want to have the database type as always, so I just know what it is. And I had in width and height, so I know the slot should be 50 to 50 pixels or units high. And then of course I have the serialized field, and that's the list of the inventory positions. I called it item, and it's a new list of inventory positions. You know how to work with the scriptable object now. And then we have to have that in our, let's see here, in our create in our list. So we build that up with the Yazil inventory, which is under the editor in the item system, Yazil inventory. And there we just copy these and build a new menu item. And it's Yazil create inventory position list. And we have a public static inventory position database inventory position list. And then we just create an asset and say it's a scriptable object.create instance. And we want to create the instance inventory position database. And we say the asset.database create asset and the save path where we want to save that. So I just want to save everything new under the asset. You always could say, okay, it's an inventory position, so save it under ItemSystem database and just make it appear here. And then you just say asset database.save assets, so it will be saved and you return the asset and you're done with it. We did that a couple times already, so it's just it should be very clear what we did there now. Okay, then we don't need these. Okay, I changed something and we don't need these any longer and we don't need these any longer. So, of course the window on off, we don't need that also. So we just have the inventory left to work with. But first of all, let's just create an list. So it has to work a little bit. Create, and we say inventory position list. And if we go here down, there it is. And here we have the width and height and the item size. So let's say we have 12 here. We just get 12 slots with the position, and of course we always could say it's a ring or an earring and position, or food or whatever it is. And let's go to what I did here. So I got a jar slot and I have 14 slots here in my slots with items. I also have char slots position, also 12 and 14, sorry. And here are the X and Y positions of my slots I had there. So I didn't do the item types now. We do that later on and say on this slot is only allowed an item type of the item type we define here. So for the last part here, we go into the inventory. Let's go here. And in the inventory, we say we have a new public inventory position database, and I called it inventory position database or DB. And a little down, we have here if the slot position out of database. So if we have the slot position out of database, we're going to have the rect transform.slot transform is equal to slot list of I get component rect transform. So we get the rect transform from the slot here. And then we say the slot transform.anchored position is a new vector 3, and there we have the inventory position database.itemi.x and the inventory position database.itemi y, and of course the z value is 0, since we original handle in a 2D environment, since it's flat and it's our UIs, we don't have an Z, we just have the X and Y position here. And then we have the slot transform delta size, or size delta is new vector2 inventory position database width and inventory position dot high. So this one is always changing because we scrolling from one item to the other, and this one is of course the fixed value at the beginning of the database. And so we make sure our slots are positioned and will be drawn after that. And that's all we have to do here. So we save that, and so you see our list of C# scripts we want to manipulate are done. So what could go wrong? It could go wrong. You don't have the inventory position database assigned here. What could go wrong? You didn't delete the settings.cnf, so it will be not created correctly. What also could go wrong? Your camera is not in the right position, so you don't see anything. Just put a visible object in front of the camera where the player should be, and you can fine-tune your camera viewing. And what next could be wrong? Okay, at the beginning of the game, or at the start of the game, you have to you have to only have one active window. In my case, I have the char base active, and the stats and the info is inactive. And here the inventory, if you go into your character, you have to have the char base as an active slot. If we go here, we have the back inventory, which is this one active. But in this character view, you have to have not the character, you have the char base, or the next or the upper folder of your inventory set to the right game object in your script. And the next, what could be wrong? You have to be sure for the name, so it should be character, but and character here. So you have in your UI the character also as a right value, and that's it. That should be everything. What could go wrong? And you see, so let's start that. We save that here. So going for play. And everything should be fine. You could be drawing, or you can draw their window. The position will be saved. You should be able to put in a weapon, not defined slot, but at least it would be there. And your camera should be going for your player and show that. So next we do is we define that only the right item can go here. So if we have a weapon slot, only a weapon could be there, and if we have an armor, only an armor could be there. So that's it for this video. Next will be in a couple hours. So if you liked it, leave a like. If you like to leave more, just hit the subscribe button. And if you want to have the source code, just go to my Patreon page and subscribe there, and you will have access to all my source code. Thank you very much. Happy night shift. Your Yazil.